session of our leading curriculum in small schools, and I'd just like to sort of thank everybody for the really positive feedback that we've received to date on the sessions, and we know we're really pleased that people are finding the information that we're sharing really useful at this time in terms of reflecting on their curriculum and supporting them in thinking about the future developments. So we hope this evening's session is equally as supportive and as helpful and as thought-provoking. And as ever, please do feel free to put questions in the chat bar, and as we go through, Elaine and I particularly will be monitoring those questions, and we will, you know, if it feels the right point, we'll answer those questions, but we'll come to them at the end of the session. So please, yeah, do make use of that chat and facility and ask questions as we go through as necessary. Okay, so we're going to just recap and just think about where we were and what we've talked about. And we've been thinking about how leaders and teachers must make sure that their monitoring and evaluation ensures that each subject's curriculum implementation is consistently followed and delivered, and the curriculum is having a strong impact on pupils' learning. And we know that that's incredibly important, that not only do we have strong curriculum intent, and we've thought about that for our small schools, and we've shared samples and examples of that planning over the last few sessions, but that also we are monitoring as leaders of our small schools and evaluating each of those subjects and checking that consistency is followed. So what we're saying we're delivering is being implemented consistently and effectively in the classroom. And as a result of that, consistency is having a strong impact on pupils' learning. So it's important for all schools to find systems of monitoring and evaluation that are manageable, but none more so in our small schools where we have a lot of demands on us as leaders, and at times it can feel very much like plate spinning, and there are always those things that come in to deflect us from that kind of our core role in terms of ensuring that the curriculum is effective as possible. So those systems that we establish have to be manageable, and they need to make sure that as a result of that, they provide the essential information that provides evidence and confirms that schools have consistently delivered the curriculum and that it's having that strong impact on pupils' learning and outcomes. And that's not just about national assessment outcomes, but that's across the curriculum, isn't it, in all of the foundation subjects. So we're wanting to ensure that that precision that we've identified in our planning is happening consistently in the lessons, and is, as a result, pupils are knowing more and remembering more. So what we hope to go through in this session, and we're really pleased to have Elaine online with us again this evening, who's going to share examples of a manageable approach, is we hope that it will share with you what is manageable for small schools and how schools must have those monitoring systems that are fully aligned to their curriculum to ensure they provide the right information to evaluate that curriculum impact. And alignment is crucial. So the systems and approaches that we'll share tonight will hopefully show you that tight alignment that is needed. So our session tonight builds on the key principles of the curriculum that we've highlighted in our previous sessions, but it also includes that knowledge-rich systematic curriculum in small learning steps about supporting pupils' working memory, remembering that essential knowledge, and making sure that there's enough practice to build pupils' fluency and automaticity. Hopefully everybody has got a copy of the workbook, and you'll see that the majority of what we're including in the slides is in there, and that there's actually more information as well in that workbook, which we'll be asking you to look at in a moment as well. So I'm going to pass over to Don now, who's going to just lead us through this next slide, which is just identifying what are the most common challenges faced by small schools when there is trying to establish effective monitoring of the curriculum. So Don, if you want to lead us through this slide, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, so previously the monitoring of foundation subjects was very low key and focused on topic work that was, you know, activity based and experience based, and it goes back to the previous curriculum before the one now that Ofsted have introduced. So at that time, that was the approach, and because of that, teachers will remember this. It's become part of their training. Many teachers who have been in the profession for a while, and as a result, what we tend to find there is that the foundation subjects sometimes that teachers had pulled back or drawn back to the fact that it's not as precise as would say their teaching of maths and English, and can get sort of focused on things and activities and forget that there is a greater precision that's needed in this curriculum for all subjects, and they have to be given the same status going through. Another issue is around the mind frames of teachers. Only recently has research come out from John Hattie. If some of you might remember Visible Learning, 10 years ago, his book was sort of a key sort of work for schools to see ways that would have the most impact on students' learning. And what he's realized, he's reviewed last year he reviewed his work, and there was another big scale research with 2,000 people in it, but he found that what he'd overlooked was that the mind frames or mindsets of the teachers had more impact than he'd given credit for, and that if that's not right, in his new book, The Sequel, that came out last year, then you're not going to succeed if people are not really following and get exactly what's being said, and they stick to what you're expecting to happen. So that's a key part for us to consider, because as a team, small primary school team, in a way it's a smaller team, but you've got to make sure that everyone is clear on what is expected in the curriculum and what will be actually happening. Following on from session 2, schools must agree as a team the learning behaviour, teaching strategies and assessment that support pupils to remember the intended curriculum and develop fluency. So that's a really, it's coming back to what Joe's gone through there. Teachers and subject leaders in small schools have limited time though, because they're doing so many jobs, which we know that, and that's one of the key challenges of it. So the monitor, in that sense, there's limited time, so it's going to need to be flexible, and it's going to need to be quick to make sure that time isn't wasted, because time is so precious. So that's a key consideration for schools, to make sure they're considering that. We have an intended curriculum. It's got to be fully delivered, and it has to have that impact on pupils. And so all these things link together. What you say is going to happen in your curriculum, what you intend for each age group has to happen, and that is at the centre and of everything when you're setting up your curriculum and making sure people are going to work together. Remember though, there's one advantage that small schools have monitoring, because obviously with having less classes, monitoring can, over a short period of time, this proves scope for flexibility, even more flexibility. So that's the advantage. It's not having to communicate to lots of people and get that consistency where everyone's agreeing. But the crucial thing is it's going to have to be, because of that limited time and all the jobs that everyone is doing and more than one subject leaders, it's going to have to be manageable. And that's one of the things we'll be focusing on.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Don. And I think at this point as well, just and for colleagues that haven't heard us talking about this before on HART, is that we know as well, don't we, Don, that Ofsted have recently acknowledged this, that, for small schools, in terms of that monitoring, the systems will have to be manageable, and they have made it very clear that they should not be expecting to see this sort of, maybe the depth and the same sort of collection of monitoring evidence in files that you may see for subject leaders, for example, who only have one subject in a larger school. So I think this understanding around more flexible arrangements and different types of recording, there isn't a one size fits all schools model, and very much that schools will have to, particularly small schools, will have systems that have become manageable for their team, given the fact that so many colleagues have so many subjects and so many aspects of the curriculum that they're monitoring at one time.
Yeah, and it's knowing their children so well in small schools that they know their children and know where they are because of that.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Don. Okay, so just within your workbook, what we've included, and we thought at this point, just building on that aspect about Ofsted, is we've included a whole range of schools, and these are from recent Ofsted reports, and it's their actions section. So from the bit what the school needs to do next to improve, we've just pulled out actions that have come up in Ofsted reports over the last kind of month or so. So very much schools in our area, in North Yorkshire and just into Leeds, and it's that slightly wider area than just North Yorkshire. But we've been looking at a range of schools, small schools, medium-sized schools, etc. And these, we just thought we'd pull together a sample of areas for improvement that have been identified, particularly linked with the curriculum. So we're just going to give you a couple of minutes just to have a glance through those, just to get a sense of some of the comments and the actions that have been reported. So just give you a couple of minutes. And hopefully, as you're going through those, you'll be able to identify some of that key language that we've been talking about, and the ones that I've identified on the PowerPoint that I hope you can see on the screen are kind of ones that I felt were particularly linked with our previous sessions. So we've talked around building precise knowledge in logical sequences, and making sure that that essential knowledge is identified. And we've also talked around, it not just being about facts, but also developing that disciplinary knowledge as well, being so important to achieve, so that pupils achieve that depth. We've talked about the sort of assessment as well, and checking and that alignment, so that we're able to use those assessments to identify gaps in pupils' knowledge. So Don, I don't know whether you want to pick up on any of the actions that have been identified before we just look at this next task.
Yeah, just that around that, you can see it's about how precise the curriculum has to be in the new framework, and that sort of has caught out lots of schools, and you see it in the reports as you're saying, Joe. And I think that's the key part of it, that the intended curriculum is, and the ambition of your curriculum has to be met. That's your main building block you start with. So you have to be delivering that, and that's where, particularly in the foundation subjects, it's going wrong. But not just the foundation subjects, where parts are not being done as the intended curriculum says. We also have other examples of disciplinary knowledge not being taught in history, just the facts, and that being missed out and spotted when the deep dive comes into the school. So all those aspects are things that you know, your monitoring and evaluation is that there is a fidelity, you know, just the same as the early reading fidelity for phonics, that your fidelity is to what you've said the curriculum's intentions are, and that you are fulfilling the ambition. And a lot of reports will say that there isn't the ambition that is being suggested by the school is not there, and it's to do with a lack of precision and not covering things, back to our earlier points.
Okay, thanks, Don. So just looking at the first sort of question, this first little task that we're just asking you to think about. So is having read those actions, that are those recommended improvement actions from those recent reports, it's just to have a moment to think and make a list perhaps in the box that's provided. So what monitoring checks would have helped to prevent those issues emerging? So obviously when the Ofsted process happens, the actions that have been identified would probably, we'd hope, would not be a surprise to leaders, but there is a chance that leaders hadn't identified those weaknesses or those areas that need further development. What, as we say here, monitoring checks would have helped to prevent those issues emerging and would have enabled the school to have been doing something about it before Ofsted identified it. So we'll just give you 30 seconds just to jot a few thoughts down and just reflect. Okay, Don, so let's have a think about this. So in terms of key monitoring checks, yeah, what would we say would help to have prevented those issues emerging and for Ofsted to have identified them perhaps before leaders had identified them themselves?
Okay. On checking is really important, as we just said there, that you, as a subject leader, and however that works, and having more than one subject in a small school, but it's that there must be checks that the curriculum is being delivered and things are not missed out, because perhaps in the past for foundation subjects, as we were saying earlier, there was less precision at that time because it was a different approach. So there has to be checks that will make sure that the curriculum, the intended curriculum in each subject, has been delivered, and that needs to have forms of monitoring that will check that, and discussions or staff meetings to make sure everybody's aware of the importance of being very precise in the curriculum, and the small steps that it's planned in would need to happen. So it's around that. We could start with that, Joe, around that monitoring checks on that.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Don. So if we just have a look at our second question there, we've sort of summarising the key areas of weaknesses identified in the reports. This will help you to consider whether you have the checks in place to prevent this happening in your school. So I think this is quite crucial as you reflect, and sometimes, you know, we read through Ofsted reports and we look at those areas for improvement, but we don't actually just sort of think about them as in a case of what could we consider whether that could have happened in a report for our school. So just seeing all of those actions as a block and perhaps just thinking through them, I think, is a really useful activity. So Don, I guess it's, you know, we hope that will help, just thinking about have the schools got those checks in place to prevent it from happening. So.
And the other one is on that, some of those that we've looked at have had that they're not enough practice moving on before they really have done all that practice that sits behind this curriculum. So that again would be how that's checked, and gaps are actually addressed, those gaps that are there that are going to be needed to be addressed by the school.
Yeah, and we know the core activities that we'd hope were forming part of that monitoring evaluation around looking at the planning, scrutinising work, talking to the pupils. So we're going to now sort of move on from that, and we're going to bring Elaine online, who's going to talk about her school's approach and that alignment alongside the provision of the curriculum, that's the precision of the curriculum that's been implemented. So I'm really pleased that Elaine's with us, and the next few slides Elaine's going to share with you examples of the models and the manageable approach that her school has adopted to be able to ensure that they have these regular checks in place that are ensuring that there is that fidelity to the curriculum happening across all classrooms. So hi Elaine, I'll pull up that first slide and I'll just hand over to you if that's okay. So yeah,
of course. Thank you. So you're just picking up on what you've just said, Jo. The only way these will work is if they are manageable. We all know about observation forms and all that sort of thing from the past, where you were writing reams of paper about what you were observing, and actually what happened to it, it went in a file and it was no use to man nor beast. What we decided here we needed was something that was going to hopefully be purposeful and quick, that was going to reveal exactly where the children were up to in their learning and their knowledge build-up. And the focus was predominantly on discussion with the children, because they won't lie, they will let you know if knowledge is actually being built. It's looking at books, and then it's looking at what's going on in the classroom from the perspective of why this, why now. So this first sheet here, it just gives you the types of questions that we're asking with children in order to find out, are they really understanding where they're up to in their learning? Do they know stuff? Are they remembering stuff? And it's quite revealing and it's very quick to do. But for us, it was most important to actually talk to children. Could you just go on to the second sheet, please, Jo?
Yeah.
So once having had the conversations with children, and you might pick 1, 2, 3 out at a playtime, quick conversation with them, few notes, then it's looking in the books. Are the books showing what the child is saying? Can you see those things? And I'll just give you a couple of minutes just to have a look through the book scrutiny and what we'd be looking for. So again, we might take 3 books across the spectrum of children working in the class, have a look at them. Could well be the books of the children that you've had conversations with, but don't need to be. And then it's looking at the actual lesson itself. So is there evidence of a learning journey? Is that learning journey clear? Have you picked up from the children that they know the journey of learning that they are on? Can you see adjustments being made for particular children in the class? What about working memory? Is there too much information being delivered within the lesson? Is there enough information being given so that children can build that knowledge? And that can tell you a lot about the pace. It can also tell you a lot about why this, why now. Are misconceptions being addressed? How are those misconceptions being addressed? You can follow up. You've got a thread that you can then follow through. Having talked to children, they may reveal misconceptions. You can then look at what you're seeing in the lesson. And these lessons, absolute maximum we're in is about 15 minutes. 10-15 minutes is enough time to be able to find out is what's been taught absolutely appropriate for the where we're up to in the learning journey. You're looking at vocabulary, you're looking at what strategies children are using for remembering. So that's in the lesson, but it's also a lot of that is from talking to children. Dialogic approaches, so talk, what's the quality of the talk, the interactions that are happening in the lesson, and that's peer-to-peer talk, teacher to pupil talk, TA to pupil talk. What's going on there? Is there any work that needs to be done there in order to improve things? And links being made to previous knowledge, etc., that you can see there. Action points. So this has come about over a long period of time of just literally shrinking these monitoring forms down, and these are just ticks or dots, or however you want to do it, to flag up that something maybe needs a little bit more of investigation or more work done as a staff or whatever. Okay, and then action points, if there are any. If there aren't any action points, we're not filling anything in. It might just be, I don't know, more work on support staff and dialogic methods with pupils or something like that. Any questions about that one at all? Does that seem fairly straightforward?
The CK and the NK, just so colleagues understand the abbreviations that you use at Asquith, so that where it says misconceptions address, the CK and the NK.
So there, yes, we've got all our teacher jargon here, haven't we? So we've got connected knowledge, CK, so what they should already know, and the new knowledge that's potentially been addressed in the lesson. Then you've got MKC, so they're mini knowledge checks. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Elaine. I'll move on to the next slide. No, can't see any questions. So
no questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a specific one that's to do with phonics for reception key stage 1. So again, tick boxes. Everything's there. I'm not going to read through it. You can see the sort of things that we're looking at. Again, you know, are we seeing the recap reading, spelling, writing being enforced in the lesson? Any notes? One sheet, tick box, not for long. In there, the phonics lesson doesn't last very long. You're in there and gives a good indication and any action points to follow up following the session. Any questions about that? Hopefully you can see that the tick box is far better than writing. You know, lots and lots of stuff that, what do you do with?
Yeah, and Elaine, sometimes there's just maybe a note occasionally, isn't there? If there's something that for a prompt for a discussion that might be just put alongside that little subheading, the tick box or whatever. But genuinely that, you know, these are not taking your members of staff. I talk to them, it doesn't take them long to complete these, and they feel that they're manageable and they're providing information that they need. So yeah,
we've agreed these. So this isn't me creating these and saying to the staff, right, off you go. We do this together and decide what is manageable. We're a small school, a small staff. It has to be something that if it's going to be done regularly, the whole point is, why are we doing this? Who's it for? It's not to fill up a fancy file and look great for Ofsted. This is something that has to really help and support the teacher that's delivering the phonics lesson. It's to inform the English lead, for example, what's going on. Is there anything else that's needed to be provided to give support? So it has to be quick, minutes. It won't work if it's not quick. So yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so just move on to the next one, which is very similar, but it's
similar, but this is spelling, key stage 2. Very much hot potato at the moment. Again, tick boxes. I've actually got Jess here, who's our English lead. Have you got anything to say about that? Spelling. Sheet there, Jess.
Just that we felt that it didn't fit in with so we tried to not have too many drop-in forms with different formats, so but certain things didn't fit. So so we did create a spelling one, and as Lane said, the hot potato, that question mark has actually changed. Now I just realised that says spelling application in their writing. So we worked on this together. We've trialed it, and we picked out what worked, what we're looking for specifically in spelling that is going to be different from other subjects. And we were also looking at how it led on from the phonics drop in as well, because we're reinforcing that sort of spine of recap, teaching, practice, apply in spelling, leading on from phonics lessons in key stage 1. So we wanted to make that really clear for teachers being observed as well as those observing, that's what is expected.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanks, Jess.
Thank you. So just move on to the next one.
Okay, another drop-in form, but you can see that they're pertinent to particular subject areas. So this is for reading, daily and weekly reading. So again, it's specific to that, and you can see as you read through it why this needs to be one on its own. Really important. But again, tick. So each of those statements, if we're happy with it, as a staff, you agree it. So for us, if it's a tick, fine, we're not revisiting it. That's it. There might just be the odd note that you're putting through it. Again, 10 minutes. And that's 10 minutes of being in the lesson and doing it. The key thing is the talking to the children, discussion with the children. That's what takes a little bit longer.
And there's no rewriting of these, Elaine, is there? So colleagues might just reflect a little bit longer out of the classroom on the action points, but the majority of time they're managing to complete these within that allocated time, so it isn't becoming another job to do on their list of jobs to do after school, for example. It's pretty much, you know, yeah, making sure it's manageable for them, isn't it? So yeah,
Yep,
okay,
absolutely.
we'll move on to the next one. Yeah, so teacher assistants.
Okay, so again, you know, we want to observe teaching assistants so that we can support. The whole point is to be able to improve outcomes for children and build their knowledge. So what can we do with our teaching assistants? So we need to look at how the pupils are being met, their needs are being met by the teaching assistants. So again, very brief form, jotted it down with the TAs, having observed a little bit, chatted to the children as well, strengths, any areas of development, a note. Doesn't take very long at all. But again, you know, teaching assistants were part of the creation of this. And again, it's about them being valued, knowing that they're being developed as well. And it's all part and parcel of that process, isn't it? And understanding that, you know, you have a significant role to play in meeting pupils' needs. Yeah. Thank you, Jo.
That's okay. So here's a moderation form now, science and core. Yeah.
Okay, so we'd spent quite a bit of time thinking, well, how do you moderate art, for example? How are we going to moderate art? You know, someone thinks that a child is great at debt, so a teacher puts forward that they've got so many children working expected in art and children working towards, or children working at greater depth. And how do we show that as a team we moderate that to support one another in our judgments? So we decided to go down this kind of no more marking approach style. Some of you may be familiar with no more marking, where you're looking at pieces of work and you're making that judgment based on your own knowledge of what you can see. So we've been doing this with our non-core for quite a while now, and it has proved to be really, really successful. So it's a group of us with the experience that we have, and that can range, you know, quite a lot in art, as you can imagine, but you are deciding together. This is, you look and you know what the outcome's supposed to be, the knowledge that the child was supposed to acquire. What have they demonstrated in this piece of work? And we agree together, have they met those essential knowledge requirements? Or do they need more deliberate practice? Or are they actually showing, and we're not talking about greater depth, what we're talking about is, have they actually shown that they have a natural curiosity within this particular theme, topic, whatever, which is beyond that essential knowledge? How are they showing that? So that then would have implications for where we take that child further in order to develop their knowledge as they go through that particular subject area. And again, we can take a whole class worth of work and we can moderate there within half an hour. All of us doing that together, and we do it for art, D&T, and so on. And it's far better than any. Do you remember years ago you used to get all these the objectives for all the non-core subjects, and you had to tick off all these hundreds of objectives. Have they met these objectives? You do this and actually you've agreed it together and justified it based on your understanding of that precision of knowledge. Have they got that knowledge? Because that knowledge has been stripped back and that's what we want them to acquire. Is that clear?
Yeah, that's
yeah.
Good. Thanks, Elaine. Yeah. So we're just moving on to some knowledge checks now, Elaine, which you've included within the set of resources. So yeah.
Okay, so monitoring a subject and therefore finding out whether or not there are gaps in knowledge, whether or not the children are being presented with the right knowledge at the right time, how they're building their knowledge. A big part of that isn't just the monitoring that you've just seen, it's about the children demonstrating that through the checking of their knowledge through such forms as you can see in front of you there. So what we do with every subject, we start the subject, so that in this case it's year 4 fractions, with a connected knowledge sheet. So what should these children know that's connected to the fractions that they're about to undertake as new knowledge, what should they already know that if they don't know is going to cause a little bit of a problem because the building blocks aren't as secure as they could be. So we give them this connected knowledge sheet. We then look at it, mark it, and then find out from it, crikey, number 3, for example, greater than, less than, pretty weak, need to do a bit of teaching with that group or that whole class, if, for example, something like that crops up, before we start new knowledge in that particular area. So it's really revealing about where they're up to and what they've already acquired. So that happens. Then hopefully we get on to teaching. So we teach. So if you move on to the next sheet, please. So throughout the teaching, we will be giving little mini knowledge checks, just checking on work that's maybe happened the previous week or 10 days or so before that. Are they still keeping it going? Is it still there? Are they not being overloaded? Is their working memory still going fine with what they're being presented with on that particular day? But yet they can still recall essential knowledge from previous work. If it's not showing that they haven't got it, then it's a let's boost this, let's make sure that we give a same-day intervention so that we can actually get that right. Going forward through their work, we will then give them the next thing, Joe, please. So the second knowledge check will be the check when they've actually finished their new knowledge. So you've presented new knowledge, and then we will check it after a period of time and find out have they actually acquired that knowledge. Is it secure? If not, we need to do something about it, boost it, and then we will be checking again further on down with a different set of questions, just to make sure that that knowledge is well and truly embedded. And overall, with the connected knowledge sheet and then the other knowledge checks, the new knowledge checks, we do 4 knowledge checks. And by the 4th one, they're pretty secure. By the 2nd one, they're not so much. And they do forget stuff. But we have found now, having done it quite a long time, that by the 4th one, they really are quite secure, especially if you make sure that the questions are different.
So yeah, that's that A to B, isn't it? And swapping those questions around, so presenting them slightly differently. Great, makes them rummage around in that working memory. So we're going to look at art now, I think, Elaine.
So again, exact same principles there, Joe. So you've got your connected knowledge to start with. So year 5, 6, they're going to be doing art and design, and they're going to be doing drawing. So to start with, there are certain skills we need to make sure that are clearly embedded. They're there, that will show us. We need to do something about it if we see that there are gaps in their learning before we move on to new knowledge. Okay, which is the next one, I think, Joe. No, mini knowledge checks as we go through, just to make sure that they're confident. And then after the unit has been taught, we will give them a knowledge check, which is the second one. The first one's connected knowledge. This is their new knowledge, and that's done a period after they've finished the unit, usually around 2 weeks after the unit, just to see if it's secure in their memory. Okay.
Yeah, that's great, Elaine. Thank you so much. And I think hopefully what colleagues can see there is, particularly with the monitoring forms, is that simplicity, an approach that the school have come to over time. And actually, I can see how that's been stripped back, that approach over time as well, really to make sure that those forms are as manageable as possible for staff within the school. And then the assessment approach, which we've talked about, and hopefully now you can see again demonstrated with those 2 subjects. And what's really striking with particularly with the art one here is there is real precision in this curriculum. So the curriculum intent is very precise. The knowledge that is expected through the progression plans that children are expected to know and remember is very clear. And as a result of that, these knowledge checks are closely aligned to that. So the school is enacting its curriculum, and it is ensuring that it is assessing children's progress alongside that curriculum, and is able then to identify gaps and support children in achieving through that sort of space recall approach that Elaine has just identified and talked about, is that by the 4th knowledge check, children have got it. So if they haven't got it at the second knowledge check, something else happens. We're not just checking children and not supporting them to be able to ultimately make that change to their long-term memory and make that progress. Okay, Don, do you want to add anything to that?
No, just how manageable it is, and it fits the quickness we've mentioned, and yeah, it's fit for purpose, isn't it? Because it's fulfilling the principles it's based on. Yeah, absolutely. So as you can see, and Don's just said, you know, it's manageable. And when you see something at first, you know, it looks new, but actually this has become a very manageable system for the school. And as Elena said, there's 4 classes, mixed age classes, for sort of main teachers, and they are all consistently following this process and have managed to get it into something that they feel is manageable in terms of their workload. So we mentioned curriculum toolkit previously, and it's just to say that the resources that ASWIS have worked at producing over a period of time are now being pulled together in a curriculum toolkit, which is going to be available later this term. And if you'd like to receive some information about that, there is a cost for the toolkit, but it's very much an affordable price. Then, you know, please do think about ordering it and contacting Kerry Young, our operations manager, who will support you in supplying more information about that toolkit as well. Thanks very much, Elaine. Thank you. Okay, so at this point, a lot of what Elaine has said very much as the starting points for their monitoring has been around talking to children. And remember that talking to children about their learning and what they remember is such a vital part of your day-to-day learning culture that supports that monitoring. So children being able to talk, we talked in our last session, and we shared some film clips with you, is just so crucial, that they are given the opportunities during the school day and they're expected to be able to articulate their learning. As a result of that learning culture that will support those monitoring visits. And, you know, making sure that there are opportunities for other visitors to school, particularly governors, to spend time talking with children is really important too. So it is, as I said, you know, we know that progress is classed as an alteration to long-term memory. And if our systematic progression model for knowledge is established over time, that will be reflected in pupils' outcomes, it will be reflected in their SATs, it will be reflected in their ability to talk knowledgeably and with increased knowledge about a wide range of curriculum areas. So at this point, I just wanted to share with you, again, one of the film clips, just to remind you about that learning culture, which links so tightly with all of this monitoring. So if you just bear with me, I'm just going to stop sharing my PowerPoint and hopefully just bring up an example of that monitoring again. And hopefully I'll be able to share it here. Sorry, hopeful of that pupil discussion. I'm hoping all sound will work.
Okay, so what makes a good learner? What is a good learner? We've had a bit of discussion. So I want you to share your ideas. Harry?
What makes a good learner is someone that can listen well to the teacher and the presentation should be nice and neat because then the teacher can watch it and you can be proud of your work.
Yeah, really like that. What are your thoughts?
I think teachers are really important because we don't have to forget a lot of our learning. So they give us action plans and strategies to make sure we can really try and do things as quickly as possible. I think having listening skills is key. You put your hands up and justify it. So always give a good example of it.
Excellent. Okay, Harry, back to you.
If someone has a good attitude, that means they're really keen on learning things, new things.
Yeah, and you've got that for a lesson, haven't you? If you want to learn more. Andy, what was your thoughts?
When you're in groups with partners, they can give ideas and you can give ideas to them because then you activities that the student is constantly, and then increasing knowledge checks within the practice part. So it's inclusively practice that is then shown to learn.
Excellent. Good. Is there any thoughts on what you had? Go on, Daisy, you have something to say.
I just wanted to add about independence. So through working with it, I'm gathering what makes the work the next learning happy about. Working with the children or like disabilities, like kind of put all of their performance to that activity, and then taking those skills, they start to develop independent skills again.
Good. And how did you want to say?
Bringing the creativity space back in the room carefully into actually setting the restrictions or with the learning.
Yeah, so we have to do that all the time. We're not serious.
Okay, we're going to stop there, Don. If you could just pick up on that for me whilst I just bring the screen back on, that would be really useful. Thank you.
Yeah, just around that, it's back to that learning culture, and everything that we're going through is really around the teaching strategies. It's not about children getting things right, it's about them remembering and becoming fluent. And the same with your assessment isn't to find out test scores and how many children got right. It's that change in culture that it's about them knowing and remembering, and the recall that you're trying to achieve for those children to become really fluent and be automatic in their learning.
Okay, thanks, Don. Thank you. So another crucial part of monitoring that we haven't touched on, so just a moment on this, is really thinking about ensuring that we have, as leaders, we have monitoring systems in place to ensure that we're considering our SEND pupils. And in small schools, just as Don and Elaine have both said, we obviously know the pupils really well, and we'll probably be having more regular conversations about our SEND pupils than perhaps leaders are in our larger schools. But we still need to be checking this out, the fidelity to healthcare plans, and also to SEND support plans, whatever you name the plans that you have in school. And as leaders, even, you know, alongside our SENCOs, in whatever subject we're monitoring, leaders should be asking questions, subject leaders, head teachers, checking all the time when they're in lessons, just you know, are the targets appropriate for the children? Are they smart? How are they produced? And really sort of checking out, are they supporting children to achieve and make progress? And are they having an impact? So it's really important that we check this out. And a really sort of manageable, again, almost sort of drop-in style form for reviewing that classroom provision that can be used in a short period of time, you know, in a half an hour walking around school in a small school. It would be something like this. So just regularly, maybe once a half term, asking some questions, going into classrooms. So thinking about maybe listing down the left-hand side the child's names, what year group they're in. And again, this could be just used as a tick list, so ticks in the box. If we can answer the question and we think that the learning steps do look like they've been broken down into small enough steps so that the children have some key knowledge that they're being supported to remember. And if we see that that's in place, we can just give that a tick. If it's not, we might make a note. We're checking about those reasonable adjustments and adaptations in the classroom. Do they seem to be appropriate to the child's support plan? So we might have a copy of that plan with us and we're just making a quick reference, and it would be a tick. Does the level of support seem appropriate for children to become independent and resilient and work alongside their peers? Just double checking that if something's changed on a support plan, have the classroom staff receive that appropriate training to be able to support the child. So we might just have a quick check-in with whoever is working with that child. Have they got the knowledge about those child's needs, and have we provided them with some training? And does it feel like the child is making progress and that there's evidence that the teacher is monitoring that carefully? We know all too often sometimes children, our special needs children, may be working with support staff if they're available, and we need to make sure that the support is also being given by the teacher who's monitoring that work and is supporting in ensuring that those our most vulnerable children are making progress. So that was just, yeah, an example of something, and it could be put in a sort of a tick box format similar to the ones that you've seen that Elaine has produced as well. Okay, Dawn, so we're just going to move on as we come towards the end of the session, just to share some evaluation forms that colleagues in our small schools might want to have a look at. And we've actually shared these this morning with our HART meeting. So I'm just going to ask you to pick up on these, Dawn, and talk about how we've just designed these simple questions to do these checks at this time.
Yes, it's that time of year when everything is, you know, building up and time's short, even more short than ever. And it's around that, if you don't do it soon, it will soon be September, to just look back at your school improvement plan for the year, and you probably will have something like 5 key priorities, just looking at that to check that where you are there and any actions you need to be considering taking because of the progress you've made on that, but also picking up on this particular program where we're talking about the need. A lot of the problems that you can see on reports are this not keeping fidelity to the intended curriculum. So we've also put in the idea of some fidelity checks, so that subject leaders are going to, you know, should have the opportunity, should we say, to make sure that the intended curriculum has been taught in their subject, and some forms to help with that. But that is, you know, if you think of some of the things we've said on the reports, you've seen of the actions, there are a lot sort of saying things like aspects of the curriculum were not, you know, disciplinary knowledge in history was a good example, was not being taught, even though it was down in the curriculum that it would be. And it's making sure that, going back to the point about how the foundation subjects in the past were more activity-based, topic-based, and that there was less precision, that people get drawn back to that and think that they can miss things out. That's important. So that's the idea of that you could be giving something to help subject leaders have a document that would allow some quick fidelity checks to find out, talking to and going through with colleagues, which areas have not been covered that were in the intended curriculum for that year group.
Thanks, Dawn. And then just finally, as we come towards the end of the session, so very grateful to Elaine and her colleagues at Asquith, who have opened up the school to welcome visitors, particularly from our small schools course, who have taken the opportunity already to go and visit the school and to look at the curriculum in action. So seeing how this curriculum that we're talking about and the monitoring, etc., all works together. So I'm just going to pass over to Elaine and just ask her to update colleagues on where we're up to with this and the offer going forward. Thanks, Elaine.
Thank you, Jo. So we've had quite a few visits so far, which has been lovely. It's been lovely to see people want to come in and chat through what we're doing here. You know, even just to sort of be able to reflect on what's going on in their own school and feel confident that what they're providing is exactly what they would want their children to have. So this is the next batch of dates. Now, because we teach in blocks, I've set out there the different subject areas that are available to be observed right through till the beginning of July, from the beginning of June till the beginning of July. The morning sessions, you will always see either maths, phonics, reading, writing across the school. You can dip into all of those right through the school. And then in the afternoon, that first week is our arts week, where we have an art exhibition. So there'll be all sorts of arts going on in classes. So if you're interested in art, that might be the week where you pop in. But you can see there's subjects ranging from science to RE, geography, etc., going on throughout the course of that month, for you to come and visit us if you want. You can either do a morning or an afternoon, or you could do the whole day. You can send, we've had people come, also staff, almost all staff come from certain schools over the course of a couple of weeks, just to drop in and see what's going on, look at books, look at displays, talk to teachers, have a cup of tea, just to chat, whatever you think would be useful for you. The offer is there. You're more than welcome to come and see what's going on here.
Thanks, Elaine. And I think building on that, Elaine, what you talked about as well is that, sometimes you've had a teacher who's, say, from year 1-2, who's just wanted to stay with year 1-2 all day.
Yeah.
And hasn't particularly looked across the year groups, but has been very focused on the work that they're doing, and maybe a teacher that's sort of maybe not long out of being an ECT, who just wants to sort of work alongside another colleague who teaches year 1-2. So we know that our teachers can be a bit isolated in our small schools, so it gives them the opportunity to network and connect. Opportunities there for subject leader as part of their development, to come and see maths or to come and see those subjects in the afternoon, but also just for class teachers as well, just to get a sense of how curriculum areas are being implemented in line with the model that's been shared. Okay, so and those dates and the form hopefully is accessible through the workbook. If it's not, then please don't hesitate to make contact with us through the email that's provided, kyoung@ycatschools.co.uk. And any of your members of staff, and we even talked about teaching assistants as well, would be welcome to come along and to see the curriculum in action. Okay, so that draws us perfectly on time to a conclusion for this session. Again, we hope that you found it useful, and we hope that it's moved on that thinking and the materials that have been shared. I'd like to thank Elaine very much for sharing the materials, and as ever, I know that the feeling is always that they are a starting point, and people may take things from them, may take something and just tweak their own forms and just some of the ideas that have been shared. But we hope that the principles of how those have been more been made more manageable are useful to see and to have heard the dialogue around them from Elaine. So thank you very much, Elaine, for sharing all of that with us tonight. Okay, so colleagues, if you have any questions, do please feel free to stay on and ask us those questions, or put something in the chat, and we'll monitor those. But if not, then we thank you for your time, and we hope you have a lovely evening. And at this point, I'm going to stop the recording. So if people do want to ask questions, then we won't be recording those. So I'm about to stop the recording now. So hopefully, people feel comfortable to ask a question if they have one before we